After a successful season, the Houston Texans season comes to a close following their divisional round loss to the Baltimore Ravens. Chancellor Johnson here with our Click 2 insider, Aaron Wilson. And Aaron, 11 wins on the season. They win the division. They identified the coach of the year in D'Amico Ryans and arguably the offensive rookie of the year in C.J. Stroud. How would you describe this season for this Houston Texans team?
A breakthrough year, and you think about it was years in the making. It wasn't just the arrival of C.J. Stroud and the hire of D'Amico Ryans. Pivotal moments to be sure, but years of roster building that even extended beyond Nick Caserio's tenure. Guys that were on the contract, like Jonathan Grenard, who's now a key free agent for them. But it just took a long time. You know, you have to have every piece. You've got to have the Pro Bowl left tackle, Laramie Tunsil. Otherwise, C.J. Stroud can't stand and make those throws. You have to draft well. You have to draft players like Tank Dell. You have to maneuver in the draft. Nick Caserio did a good job to get Will Anderson Jr. Think about how much that move was criticized. Guess what? They have the 23rd overall pick, and the Browns, you know, that pick didn't want to be that consequential. You look at everything that's happened with the Texans, and it's been a steady build with the dramatic rise. But it was really, and Cal McNair and Hannah McNair, they said this very well. This was at a event they had here. I think we were in early December. And it looks sudden, but it's really years in the making.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, after you lose a tough one, you know, on the road in the playoffs, it can be easy to be disappointed. But talking to the guys in the locker room just now, kind of the theme of the day was a bright future. Why do the Houston Texans believe that?
They have the quarterback. They have the head coach, as you said. They have Will Anderson Jr. He was a candidate for NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. They have layers and layers and layers of players. That's when you build something sustainable. Nick Caserio, I remember earlier in the year, was talking about, let's try to be like the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens, the New England Patriots. Build something sustainable where you're good every year, not just a flash in the pan. You build the foundation the right way. That's why they're confident. It's because they know that they have talent, but they have a great bond in that locker room. We spent a lot of time in that locker room, not as much as the players, but we were in that locker room. It's hard not to come away with a feeling of that they have genuine friendships and that they will work together and pull for each other.
For sure.
Dameon Pierce is a great example. This was a very frustrating year for him. He cheered very hard for Devin Motor Singletary, his teammate, his brother. And these bonds, they might sound corny, they might sound like to these people that are like, oh, this is pro sports, this is business. No, these are human beings. Yep. It's about friendship, it's about character, and they talk a lot about football character. That's being willing to do everything to sell out, to sacrifice for your teammates. They have that, and that starts with the coach. That's the leadership. Because if you don't have the buy-in mentality, if people are like second-guessing or, you know, locker room lawyers, I like to call them, you have too many of those, you don't have a team. You've got a bunch of individuals.
You know, and the Texans also have the draft capital. They also have the cap space going into this offseason. But, of course, they also have to re-sign some of their own key free agents. Some names like Jonathan Grenard, some names like Dalton Schultz, potentially. What are you kind of hearing on that and, like, what the Texans could do to help continue to build for the future?
Preliminary conversations and suggestions about price, that's already been had. So some of the players, that includes Jonathan Grenard, Blake Cashman. They will attempt to get their specialists back, the Ka'imi Fairburns, the John Weeks, the Cameron Johnstons, their own special teams coordinator, Frank Ross, whose contract has expired. You look at everything that they will attempt to do, I would say Grenard is the number one priority, and they will try to get that done. As he said, if it's his last rodeo with the team, then it was great, but he said it's out of his control, meaning if they don't do the right number that he thinks he can get on the market from someone else, then they've made their decision for him, because you cannot just leave millions and millions on the table. He is a father. He is going to get married. He's got his wedding coming up, and we're talking about generational wealth. So it's a business decision, but if it was up to him, if it was just personal, I know he'd sign today if the contract was right. Other guys, Dalton Schultz, they'll want to have him back because of how much of a security blanket he was for C.J. Stroud. Other players I don't think will come back just because of the other players they have on the roster. George Fant played very well at right tackle, but the plan is to get Titus Howard eventually back to his natural right tackle position, and they've already paid him. So I think, even though George had a great year, he would move on. Devin Singletary told us he would like to come back. So would Blake Cashman. Cashman is going to be very price dependent because he has changed his market. He's become a every down linebacker and their leading tackler, and it's either a reward here or reward somewhere else for Blake Cashman.
Now, that's how the Texans can address their roster through free agency. But through the draft, what positions could they potentially target to go younger and continue to build with that young roster they currently have?
Wide receiver and cornerback. Robert Woods gave them great depth, but he's an older player, and he got hurt a lot. Corner is interesting because a lot of that, even if they do bring back Steven Nelson, which is a free agent I didn't mention, because I think his market price could be beyond what they might want to pay a player that celebrated his 31st birthday today. Happy birthday, Steve. You think about what's happened. And the idea of having a younger guy, maybe someone that can also play nickel, because Desmond King is another free agent. Getting someone like, we were watching the AFC divisional round game with the Chiefs and the Bills. Look at the nickel play that the Chiefs were getting. They have an all-pro at the nickel position, so that's becoming even more important. How do you defend the slot? I think it'd be great if they could have Steve back and another corner, but I look at wide receiver, tight end, and the cornerback position as really important ones for them. And let's be honest, safety. Jimmy Ward had a lot of injuries. He's heading into the final year of his contract. Jalen Petrie did not have the year that he'd hoped for. He's capable of much more, and I think he will reach his potential in year 3. But those are some spots that I look at.
An important offseason coming up for the Houston Texans, looking to build on their double-digit win season, including winning the division as well. We have plenty more Texans coverage throughout the offseason right here on Click to Houston. For Aaron Wilson, I'm Chancellor Johnson here at NRG Stadium.